Probably just a shitty day was all. You get 'em everywhere. There surely was a seedy look about the place, though, as the sailors scuttled to make the boat fast to the dock. Brick buildings lined the grey sweep of the bay, narrow-windowed, all squashed in together, roofs slumping, paint peeling, cracked-up render stained with salt, green with moss, black with mould. Down near the slimy cobbles, the walls were plastered over with big papers, slapped up at all angles, ripped and pasted over each other, torn edges fluttering. Faces on them, and words printed. Warnings, maybe, but Shivers weren't much of a reader, especially not in Styrian. Speaking the language was going to be enough of a challenge. The waterfront crawled with people, and not many looked happy, or healthy, or rich. There was quite the smell, or to be more precise, a proper reek. Rotten salt fish, old corpses, coal smoke, and overflowing latrine pits rolled up together. If this was the home of the grand new man he was hoping to become, Shivers had to admit to being more than a touch disappointed. For the briefest moment he thought about paying over most of what he had left for a trip straight back home to the north on the next tide. But he shook it off. He was done with war, done with leading men to death, done with killing and all that went along with it. He was set on being a better man. He was going to do the right thing, and this was where he was going to do it. Right then. He gave the nearest sailor a cheery nod. Off I go. He got no more than a grunt in return, but his brother used to tell him it was what you gave out that made a man, not what you got back. So he grinned like he'd got a merry send-off, strode down the clattering gangplank and into his brave new life in Styria. He'd scarcely taken a dozen paces, staring up at looming buildings on one side, swaying masts on the other, before someone barged into him and near knocked him sideways. "My apologies," Shivers said in Styrian, keeping things civilized. "Didn't see you there, friend." The man kept going, didn't even turn. That prickled some at Shivers' pride. He had plenty of it still, the one thing his father had left him. He hadn't lived through 7 years of battles, skirmishes, waking with snow on his blanket, shit food and worse singing, so he could come down here and get shouldered. But being a bastard was crime and punishment both. Let go of it, his brother would have told him. Shivers was meant to be looking on the sunny side. So he took a turn away from the docks, down a wide road and into the city. Past a clutch of beggars on blankets, waving stumps and withered limbs. Through a square, where a great statue stood of a frowning man pointing off to nowhere. Shivers didn't have a clue who he was meant to be, but he looked pretty damn pleased with himself. The smell of cooking wafted up made Shivers' guts grumble. Drew him over to some kind of stall where they had sticks of meat over fire in a can. "One of them," said Shivers, pointing. Didn't seem much else needed saying, so he kept it simple. Less chance of mistakes. When the cook told him the price, he near choked on his tongue. Would have got him a whole sheep in the north, maybe even a breeding pair. The meat was half fat and the rest gristle. Didn't taste near so good as it had smelled, but by that point it weren't much surprise. It seemed most things in Styria weren't quite as advertised. The rain had started up stronger now, flitting down into Shivers' eyes as he ate. Not much compared to storms he'd laughed through in the north, but enough to damp his mood a touch, make him wonder where the hell he'd rest his head tonight. It trickled from mossy eaves and broken gutters, turned the cobbles dark, made the people hunch and curse. He came from the close buildings and onto a wide riverbank, all built up and fenced in with stone. He paused a moment, wondering which way to go. The city went on far as he could see, bridges upstream and down, buildings on the far bank even bigger than on this side. Towers, domes, roofs, going on and on, half-shrouded and turned dreamy grey by the rain. More torn papers flapping in the breeze, letters daubed over.